Hello, this is Mark Wildman of Wildman Athletica, and today we're going to talk about intermittent fasting. Over the course of the last couple of days, I've gotten some questions from some athletes about intermittent fasting. What do I think about it? Specifically, we had a soccer player who trains 6 days a week, and he asked me, do I think intermittent fasting is good? The answer is yes, I do. I like intermittent fasting. So what is intermittent fasting? Intermittent fasting is not a diet, it is a schedule of eating. Instead of having a diet where you only eat very specific foods, you just limit it down to eating within a specific time frame. And the one that I like the most is 16-8. 16 hours of not eating and 8 hours of eating. I'm gonna tell you why I like this. My job. In the movie business, the mornings are brutal. They're always different. Wake up time is different, workout time is different, and the food available to you is usually not great. If you are on set, breakfast is usually terrible. I was just on a movie in Romania. Breakfast was fried cheese and cold cuts. Not great. What are your options? Your options are either eat that food or just skip it and get 2 lunches. I chose to skip it and get 2 lunches. And so do most other people in the film business, actually. Almost every stunt guy I know does a version of this where they condense their eating down to when the good food is available. So in the morning, you wake up, you go to set, you don't know a time. Basically, 6 hours later, there's a lunch if you're on a 12-hour workday, and then you get the good food. You get lunch. You get chicken, grilled chicken, vegetables. You get all your good options at lunchtime, because they usually have 3 big options. And so what I will do is take and eat a lunch, and then I will get a to-go box and make myself another badass lunch of dead animals and as many vegetables as I can find, and I'll take 2 other lunches with me, and I will eat them at 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. And yeah, I usually try to condense all my food into that short period of time, because that's when the best food is available to me. That's one reason I do it. The other reason I do it is training in the morning is when we tend to train for movies, and that training is usually super, super, super hard. I started training with a very famous group of stunt guys, and their training starts at 7:30 a.m. every morning. It's 7:30 to 9. And that means I have to wake up at 6, get all my gear together, get on a motorcycle at about 6:15, ride 45 minutes in the freezing cold, get there by 7, get off the bike, change into clothes, do my own personal 15-minute wake up, warm up, personal coffee workout before usually about people start to line up for the workout at about 5 minutes to 7:30, and everything's got to be awake, you got to be going, you already have to have a bit of a sweat on, and then that workout is soul crushing. And the next hour and a half is brutal, absolutely brutal. It is rolls, flips, drops. You're getting chucked hundreds of times you're hitting the mat. If you eat before that, you're definitely gonna throw up. And then after that whole thing, you get done at 9, you change, you ride back. I get back to the studio around 10, and you're not hungry at all. You are not hungry at all until about noon, when your body is quieted down enough that you can actually process food. So the only thing that I have in the morning is water. And then I limit my eating to 8 hours in the middle of the day, because that's when the most fun food is available. But if I'm here in LA and I go to noon CrossFit class, I don't eat until after that noon CrossFit class, till about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I like to be done eating by about 7 or 8 p.m. if I can, so that I can start to taper down and get ready for bed. I know, I'm getting old. I go to bed super early now, like lights out at 8:30, and that is because of the film business. Like, you really are trying to get as much sleep as possible, because you don't know if you're going to get consistent sleep in the future because of the way the film business works. I really like intermittent fasting, and I think that this is not something that people do, because if you grew up in the Midwest like I did, this is not how we did it at all. I grew up on a farm, and you woke up at 5 a.m. and you usually went out and you worked straight up first thing. You got up, you went outside, you fed the horses, you started doing things, and usually around 7 o'clock you came in and you ate a big meal, and then you went right back out to the barn or back out to the field. And then we didn't eat a lot for lunch because that was usually the hottest part of the day. You know, in the summer in Ohio, it's 100% humidity. You had something light, usually like a light sandwich. And then we would get all the way till 6 o'clock or dark if you're baling hay. And then we would come in and we would eat absolutely everything in sight and fall asleep. So that's the way that I did it for the majority of my life. And it didn't really work out for me that well, because I continued to try and eat that way all the way through college. And I found I woke up, I ate a bunch of food, and then I fell asleep at 10 a.m. in my classes. And I didn't really hear about this until much later, until I was out of college and I was already a trainer, and we were all told to do the 6 meals a day. And that's what the standard athletic advice was when I started being a trainer, was 6 meals a day. You had 3 meals, they were all kind of small, and you had 3 snacks in the middle. So you ate at 8 a.m., 10 a.m., noon, 2 or 3, 5, and then again at 7. And the idea of that was that you were eating small meals and you were keeping your body constantly fueled with food coming in. The problem with that is that it never forces you to go into fat burning reserves. There's been a lot of research on this done recently. I read an excellent paper in the CrossFit Journal in October when I was in Atlanta. I'll have to go back and I'll have to look for that and see if I can't find that article about blood glucose levels and its effect on diabetes and on athletics. Basically, every time you eat, you have a blood glucose spike, and your blood sugar does all kinds of things. It causes a raising or lowering of your available energy, essentially. And that's made a lot of sense to me because I've been feeling that for years, and I was, thought that it was me, or that that's what we were supposed to be like. And it's not true. We're not supposed to feel like that. We're supposed to feel kind of constant all the time. I first heard about this from Pavel, the great Russian kettlebell coach, Pavel Tsatsouline. I'm probably butchering that. In fact, I'm sure I'm butchering that. In, I think, my first RKC in like 2005. And I sat across from him at lunch, and he very specifically said Americans didn't know anything about food, and we were all eating way too often, and we were drinking way too much water, which I thought was hilarious. He was the original advocate of the warrior diet. The warrior diet was, I'm gonna give you a really, really short version of the warrior diet, was you wake up and you only eat really light things, like maybe nuts and fruit in the beginning of the day, and then you have a huge meal at the end of the day. That was the first kind of version of intermittent fasting that I was exposed to. And it didn't make any sense to me because everybody, National Academy of Sports Medicine, ACE, everybody told you that was wrong, that was wrong. And of course, as usual, the Russians are better at training than us, and they figured it out. And so Pavel would just eat, at the seminars that I went to, he would just eat a plate of meat. That was it. He would take all the green stuff and throw it away and just eat meat, which I thought was hilarious. But now I realize it's actually very, very true. My first personal experience of doing something like this was when I went on a survival trip, a 2-week survival trip, where you go out and you gather natural plants and you basically live off the land for 2 weeks with an instructor. Very similar to stuff that I did in my youth, but I just never done like a full 2-week thing in California. I was good at eastern woodlands, but I was terrible at California because nothing here is green. I don't recognize any of the plants. I didn't spend any time here, so I went out to do a class. And this is how we ended up eating. We didn't eat anything at breakfast. We woke up, we hiked, we trained, we worked on skills, and then we usually had something small for lunch, usually of gathered greens, wild greens, stinging nettle, cactuses, all this other stuff. We had that during the day, and then at night we had a big meal of meat that we would cook ourselves with no tools, no metal implements or anything, over a fire. And this was my first experience with real intermittent fasting, and I thought it would be terrible, but after day 2, I felt amazing. I felt absolutely amazing. When I came back, I started looking at all the stuff that people were telling me about nutrition from other trainers and all the nutritional advice that I've been gotten my whole life, and it just didn't make any sense. Natural people eat more like this, and now I eat more like this because of availability of quality food at certain times of day, and because I feel much better. I wake up, I work out immediately in the morning, and I feel like this really mimics a natural life progression. You wake up, let's think hunter-gatherer. You would wake up and you would go out and you would start to hunter-gather. You might eat some things along the way, a la warrior diet, but then the goal is to expend a bunch of energy, do a bunch of stuff to get that big meal at the end of the day. Do I think that this is good for athletics in the modern sense? I do. I really, really do. What really cemented this for me was listening to stunt guys talk, and stunt guys very specifically saying, we don't eat before a big stunt because you want to be hungry and you want to be sharp. Being hungry makes you sharp. If you're about to do something that's insanely dangerous, do not eat a big meal beforehand. Be hungry. It keeps you awake, it keeps you alert, and it keeps you sharp. And then after all the dangerous stuff for the day is done, then you sit down and you can have a big series of meals. So you can have all of your meals at once and make it one meal a day, but really stretch it out over 2 hours. Or you can just start collapsing that into a smaller and smaller period of time. So I personally tend to do 8 hours of eating or 6 hours of eating. If I know I have some type of Hollywood event at night and I'm gonna have to go out and have dinner or something like that, then I will push back my initial eating time until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And it makes me personally feel much better. There's a lot of science on this now, but there was a lot of science on every other method too. So, what is good? I don't know. I like this one. Everybody's gonna tell you something different. Everybody's gonna claim to be an expert. The truth is, all of the things seem to work because humans are omnivores and we are infinitely adaptable. So you could just feed us a steady stream of goo and it would probably work pretty well for a while. Anything works pretty well for a while. And as your circumstances change, these things will change. But for our soccer athlete, yes, I think that this is a good idea. I think that you should wake up, do all your training in the morning if you can, and then eat later at night. If on game day, don't eat until after the game. Fighters don't eat until after the fight. And so that's what I'm basing all of this on. These have been some thoughts on intermittent fasting with Mark Wildman.